Welcome back, English learners. My name is Marco, and I'm joined here by the lovely
Erica.
And today we're going to be bringing you another great lesson, one of the lessons that you requested.
Yes, that's right. Actually, Maxim S requested this one.
Right. I think he's really into research and investigation, so we're bringing you a great lesson about this topic.
Okay, so I'm really excited to hear this dialogue all about research. So why don't we start listening to two university professors discussing an important question.
We've been over this 1,000 times. The data is irrefutable. Look, we've done extensive research, built studies, and read the literature, and there is conclusive evidence to support my theory.
Horowitz, I beg to differ. Even in your most recent study, the investigative approach was flawed. You know as well as I do, the collection of data was not systematic, and there's a large margin of error. To draw a definitive conclusion based on that data would be misleading.
That is preposterous.
You are trying to single-handedly solve one of the world's greatest mysteries, and yet you're oblivious to the fact that you're wrong.
I am not wrong. The chicken came first.
No! The egg came first!
The chicken.
Egg!
The chicken.
The egg!
The chicken.
The egg!
All right, so interesting. Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
It's an age-old question, isn't it?
And apparently, they are not going to agree anytime soon.
All right, well, what they can agree about is this awesome language. So why don't we take a look at it now in Language Takeaway.
Language takeaway.
Okay, on Language Takeaway today, we have some really great words, and this first one is really good. Irrefutable.
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 The data is irrefutable.
Okay, so if the professor says that the data is irrefutable, what does he mean by that?
He's saying that you cannot deny it. It is really, really true.
It is really true. There is no way this is a lie.
Exactly.
Okay. Irrefutable evidence, for example.
Yeah, that's a great phrase. All right, so the professor complained that Dr. Horowitz's experiment was flawed.
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 So, flawed. Is that an adjective, a verb, or a noun?
It is an adjective
Okay.
here. Now, when something is flawed, there is a problem with it, right?
Okay,
There's
so
a
it
mistake.
has an error.
Yep.
Okay. So this adjective is a way of saying that his experiment has a flaw.
A mistake.
A
Exactly.
mistake. So flawed is the adjective of a flaw.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the reason that his study or his experiment was flawed is because that it was not systematic.
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 So systematic. That's an interesting word.
Now, I think we can recognize the word system in here, right?
Right?
So when something is systematic, it follows a process.
A certain order.
Yes, a certain system.
Right. So that's basically what systematic means, to follow a certain order, to be more organized, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And what about our next word?
Preposterous.
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 That is preposterous.
I love this phrase.
It usually goes together, right? That is preposterous.
Yep.
Okay, so what does it mean when I say that?
It means it's absurd. It's ridiculous.
Right. It doesn't make sense. I can't believe you said that.
All right. Well, this is a really interesting phrase, but I think it's a little bit more common when it's used by older people.
Yeah, I don't really see a young person going up to someone and say, hey, that's preposterous.
Yeah, but it is a wonderful phrase. Now, our final phrase for takeaway, oblivious.
Oblivious.
You're oblivious to the fact.
So a person that is oblivious to something.
They don't know, or they're unaware.
Okay, so they ignore maybe the facts, or
Exactly.
they don't see it.
Yeah, you're oblivious to the fact that we're in a recession.
Okay, or he is completely oblivious. You can just say it like that, right?
Yep, he doesn't know.
Okay, so we took a look at some of the great vocabulary we found in the dialogue, but there were also some really good phrases that I think we should look at.
Okay, and let's take a look at those and putting it together.
Putting it together.
You know, Marco, one of the things I love about English is the way that words seem to fit together, like blocks coming together. And here we have a lot of great examples of these words that fit together really nicely. Okay, so why don't we look at those? And our first one now is extensive research.
Extensive research.
Extensive research.
All right, so we know extensive means
A lot.
a lot.
Yeah.
So that's really good when you put it together. Extensive research. It means you have
A lot of research.
really studied, you have really looked things up. Okay, extensive research.
Another great research-related phrase here is conclusive evidence.
Conclusive evidence.
Conclusive evidence.
All right, now the first word there, conclusive.
When something is conclusive, you can't argue with it. It's the final decision. All right, well, the professor complained that Horowitz's investigative approach was flawed, right? Mm-hmm. So this is our next phrase, investigative approach.
Investigative approach.
Investigative approach.
Okay, so I remember the word investigate is a verb.
Yes?
But in this case, it's an
adjective.
adjective,
When something is investigative, it's obviously having to do with
an investigation. Mm-hmm. So the approach so when he said investigative approach.
just simply the way you investigate
The
problem.
The way he investigated. Okay. Very interesting. What about this other phrase that I saw? It was really interesting. Definitive conclusion.
Definitive conclusion.
So a definitive conclusion.
All right. Well, again, I think we know the word conclusion, right?
Okay.
So it's a final judgment or decision.
All right.
When something is definitive, you can't argue with it or change it.
Okay, so the conclusion or the final result is final. Like there is no way of arguing it.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Definitive conclusion.
This is some great language. So why don't we listen to it one more time in the dialogue?
We've been over this 1,000 times. The data is irrefutable. Look, we've done extensive research, built studies, and read the literature, and there is conclusive evidence to support my theory.
Horowitz, I beg to differ. Even in your most recent study, the investigative approach was flawed. You know as well as I do, the collection of data was not systematic, and there's a large margin of error. To draw a definitive conclusion based on that data would be misleading.
That is preposterous.
You are trying to single-handedly solve one of the world's greatest mysteries, and yet you're oblivious to the fact that you're wrong.
I am not wrong. The chicken came first.
No! The egg came first!
The chicken.
Egg!
The chicken.
The egg!
The chicken.
The egg!
So, an interesting question. What do you think? What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, if you ask me, it was the egg.
It was the egg?
Yeah.
Interesting. What about why did the chicken cross the road?
To get to the other side.
Do you think that's really the reason?
Well, there's a million different reasons, but this is great. I'm glad you brought that up because this is like the classic English joke.
The classic English joke, right? Why did the chicken cross the road? And the answer is always...
Well, there are a million answers. So, do you guys know any chicken jokes?
Yeah, on the comments section, why don't you leave us your thoughts on what came first, the chicken or the egg? And why do you think the chicken crossed the road?
Research is a big part of learning, teaching, and solving problems in real life. Every day, people around the world do research to understand how things work, why something happens, or what the best answer is to a question. Whether the scientist studying a new medicine, a student writing a paper, or a team trying to improve a product, research helps people find answers based on facts, not just opinions. The goal of research is to find the truth, or at least to find evidence that supports a clear answer. When someone says, "I did some research," it means they look for information in a serious way. They didn't just guess or copy what someone else said. They searched, read, tested, and studied. They use a method, a process that helps them stay focused and fair. To do good research, you often need to ask a question. For example, Imagine someone asks, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It sounds like a joke, but actually, it's a deep question that scientists and philosophers have discussed for many years. Some people say the chicken came first. Others say the egg came first. To find the answer, you need to look at science, biology, and maybe even history. In research, people collect data. Data means information, facts, numbers, or details you can measure or study. If the data is strong and clear, people might say, the data is irrefutable. That means the facts cannot be denied. They are so clear and so strong that no one can say they are false. But not all research is perfect. Sometimes a study has problems. Maybe the information was collected the wrong way. Maybe the test was too small or too short. When something like that happens, we say the research is flawed. A flaw is a mistake or weakness. If the research is flawed, the results may not be correct. This is why research must be systematic. That means it must follow clear steps, in order, with care. Being systematic helps avoid errors and helps others understand and trust your work. For example, a scientist who uses a clear method, tests many times, and explains everything in detail is doing systematic research. When someone doesn't do that, others might disagree with their results. They might say, this approach is flawed, or the data is not reliable. In serious debates, people often talk about research quality. They look for conclusive evidence, which means strong proof that clearly supports one answer. Research is not always about being right. Sometimes it's about asking better questions, checking your ideas, and being open to other points of view. That's what makes research exciting. It's a journey toward understanding, and anyone who wants to learn and grow can be a part of it. Good research takes time, patience, and a clear method. It is not just about collecting information. It's about finding the best way to understand something. When people talk about research, they often use the phrase extensive research. This means research that is deep, complete, and detailed. If you do extensive research, you spend a lot of time reading, testing, asking questions, and looking at results. You don't just search for quick answers. You explore many sides of the topic. For example, if someone wants to understand the history of a city, they might visit libraries, read old newspapers, interview people, and look at maps. All of this together is extensive research. It shows effort and serious thinking. Another useful phrase is conclusive evidence. This means strong proof that helps you make a final decision. When you have conclusive evidence, it becomes hard for anyone to disagree with you. For instance, if you find photos, videos, and several witnesses that show the same event, that's conclusive evidence. It helps prove that something really happened. But even with strong evidence, people don't always agree. That's because different people may use different methods or ways of thinking. This is why the investigative approach matters. An investigative approach is the way someone studies a question. It includes the steps they take, the tools they use, and how they check their results. A good investigative approach is organized and fair. It looks at the facts and avoids guessing or jumping to conclusions. Let's say two scientists study the same problem. One uses a slow, careful method. The other uses a quick test with fewer checks. They might end up with different answers. In this case, other researchers will want to know how each person did their study. They'll look at their approach to see which one is stronger. This is why people also talk about definitive conclusions. A definitive conclusion is a final decision or answer based on strong research. It means you have done your work, checked your facts, and believe your result is clear. But remember, not all research ends with a definitive conclusion. Sometimes the answer is still not clear. That's okay. In those cases, researchers say more study is needed. In real life, we often hear people say things like, the results are not yet conclusive, or we have not reached a definitive conclusion. These phrases help explain that the research is still going on or that there are still questions to answer. Doing good research also means accepting that your first idea might not be correct. Maybe the facts lead you in a different direction. Maybe you learn something new that changes your mind. That's part of the process. It's not about always being right. It's about learning and growing through careful study. Learning these research-related phrases, like extensive research, conclusive evidence, investigative approach, and definitive conclusion, can help you in school, work, and daily life. They make you sound more professional and show that you know how to talk about ideas in a smart, thoughtful way. Whether you are writing, speaking, or simply thinking about a problem, these phrases help you explain your ideas more clearly. In research, people often have different opinions. This is normal and even helpful because asking questions and challenging ideas can lead to better answers. But when you disagree with someone's research, it's important to explain why and to use the right words to do it in a clear and respectful way. One useful word is flawed. If you say that a study is flawed, you mean that there is something wrong with it. Maybe the study used the wrong method, or maybe the results were not carefully checked. Saying the study is flawed means you believe there's a mistake or a weakness in the research. This doesn't mean the whole idea is bad, but it means you think something important was missing or done in the wrong way. For example, imagine someone says, "This test shows that eating carrots makes you smarter," but they only tested 5 people, and they didn't compare the results with other foods. In that case, someone might respond, "That test is flawed. The sample size is too small and the method is not strong." This kind of feedback helps improve future studies. Another important word is systematic. A systematic approach means using clear steps and following a method. It means that the research was done in an organized and careful way. If someone says the research was not systematic, they are pointing out that it lacks structure or planning. When research is not systematic, it's harder to trust the results. In real-life conversations, you might hear phrases like, "We need a more systematic approach," or "the data was collected in a systematic way." These are good ways to describe research that is serious and trustworthy. Sometimes, when people strongly disagree with something, they use a word like preposterous. This word means something is ridiculous or completely wrong. It's a strong word, and it shows surprise or disbelief. If someone says, "That idea is preposterous," they're saying, "I can't believe you really think that." It's not a polite word, but is often used for humor or strong disagreement. Imagine someone says, "I believe cats can speak English, but they just choose not to." The response might be, "That's preposterous." Of course, this is just a joke, but it shows how people use the word to react to ideas that sound silly or impossible. Another useful word is oblivious. If someone is oblivious, they don't notice something important. They are unaware. For example, if a person is talking loudly on the phone in a quiet library, someone might say, "He's completely oblivious to the people around him." In research, being oblivious means ignoring facts or missing something that matters. You might hear someone say, "She is oblivious to the recent studies," or "He was oblivious to the errors in his report." This kind of language is useful when talking about mistakes or misunderstandings in a professional way. In any serious discussion, whether in school, work, or a research setting, these words help you explain problems clearly. Instead of just saying, "I don't agree," you can say, "The data seems flawed," or "The method is not systematic," or "He is oblivious to the latest findings." These phrases sound professional and help you speak with more detail and confidence. Learning how to express disagreement, explain mistakes, and ask better questions is part of being a strong communicator. These skills are useful in every language, and they are especially valuable in English when discussing research reports or ideas. Doing research is not only about collecting facts. It's also about thinking carefully asking the right questions, and making strong arguments. When someone wants to support their idea, they must explain it clearly and use strong examples. In English, there are many useful phrases and expressions that help people present their ideas in a smart and convincing way. One helpful phrase is a compelling case. If someone says, "She made a compelling case," it means she gave strong reasons and clear examples that made others believe her point. A case in this context means an argument or explanation, and compelling means powerful and convincing. For example, if a scientist explains a new idea using facts, studies, and logic, someone might say, "That's a compelling case of change." Another important phrase is circumstantial evidence. This means the facts or clues that suggest something is true, even if they don't directly prove it. For example, imagine someone sees muddy footprints outside their door and later finds a floor wet inside. They might say, "There is circumstantial evidence that someone came in with wet shoes." It's not direct proof, but it points in a clear direction. In research and in law, circumstantial evidence is used often. It helps people form ideas, even when full proof is missing. You can use this phrase when you want to describe facts that are linked to a result, but don't fully explain it. Another useful expression is associated with. This phrase means that two things are connected or linked. In research, you might say, "High sugar intake is associated with health problems," or "This drug is associated with fewer side effects." It's a way to show that one thing often happens together with another thing, but not necessarily as a direct cause. When you're trying to explain research results or talk about facts, you might also use the verb indicate. This means to show or suggest something. For example, the results indicate that more people prefer online learning, or the data indicates a strong link between sleep and memory. Using indicate helps you sound professional and focus on the facts. Another common research word is determine. To determine something means to find out or decide something after studying or testing. In research, people often say, "We need more data to determine the cause," or "This study determines effects of a new treatment." It's a strong verb that shows serious thinking and effort. You can also hear the phrase single-handedly. This means doing something alone, without help. In science or research, it's usually difficult to do everything single-handedly. Most projects involve teams. But if someone says, "He single-handedly wrote the entire report," it means he did all the work by himself. It's a good word to use when talking about effort and responsibility. When you combine these kinds of words, compelling case, circumstantial evidence, associated with indicate, determine, single-handedly, you begin to speak about research in a smart and natural way. These are not just technical words. They help you explain ideas, connect facts, and show others that your thinking is serious and well-organized. Whether you are writing a report, giving a presentation, or joining a group discussion, these words give you the tools to speak clearly and professionally. And even in everyday life, these expressions can help you explain your ideas better, support your opinions, and make your communication stronger. In serious discussions or debates, how you present your opinion is just as important as what you say. In research and investigation, people often see things differently, and it's common to disagree. But instead of arguing emotionally, strong speakers and writers use logic, polite language, and clear expressions to support their views. Learning these kinds of phrases in English can help you express disagreement, explain your opinion, or challenge someone else's idea in a smart and respectful way. One useful phrase is, "I beg to differ." This is a polite way of saying, "I disagree with you." For example, if someone says, "The egg came first," and you believe the opposite, you might respond, "I beg to differ. I believe the chicken came first." This phrase shows that you don't agree, but you are not being rude. It's often used in formal conversations or academic discussions. Another helpful expression is draw a conclusion. This means to decide something after thinking carefully about the facts. In English, you might say, from this research, we can draw the conclusion that exercise helps reduce stress. Or you can say, it's too early to draw a conclusion. We need more data. This is a very common phrase in reports, papers, and presentations. Sometimes, people jump to conclusions, which means they make a decision too fast, without enough information. In a discussion, you can say, let's not jump conclusions until we have all the facts. This shows that you want to stay careful and thoughtful, which is important in any research or decision-making process. Another advanced but useful word is misleading. If something is misleading, it gives a wrong idea. It may look true, but it's not complete or clear. For example, a headline that says, eating chocolate helps you lose weight, might be misleading if the study behind it is small or poorly done. In conversation, you can say, that result is misleading because the test was not done properly. You can also say something is based on weak evidence. That means the facts used to support the idea are not strong enough. For example, their conclusion is based on weak evidence, so it's not very convincing. These kinds of phrases are helpful when you need to question someone's opinion in a respectful way. In research, it's important to know when something is confirmed and when it is still a theory. A theory is an idea that explains something, but it may not be fully proven yet. Scientists often say things like, our theory is supported by evidence, but more study is needed to confirm it. Using words like support, suggest, or indicate helps you explain that something might be true, but you're not claiming it as 100% proven. To sound confident in English without sounding rude, you can use polite phrases such as, in my opinion, I believe, or the evidence seems to show that. These are soft ways to give your point of view. Instead of saying you're wrong, you could say, that view is interesting, but I see it differently, or there may be another way to look at it. Using respectful and thoughtful language shows that you're not just trying to win an argument. You're trying to understand, to explore, and to learn. That's what research and investigation are really about. It's not about always being right. It's about looking closely, thinking carefully, and using language wisely to make your message clear and respectful. These are skills that will help you in school, at work, and in life. Research is not just about finding answers. It's about learning how to ask better questions, how to think clearly, and how to communicate ideas with respect and confidence. The words and phrases we use in research help us describe facts, explain opinions, and take part in serious discussions. These skills are not only important in science or school, they're also useful in everyday life. When we do research, we look for patterns, we ask why things happen, and we try to find out what is true. Along the way, we learn to be careful with our words. Instead of saying, I know I'm right, we say, the evidence supports this idea. Instead of saying that's wrong, we might say, that conclusion is not supported by strong data. This kind of language makes us sound thoughtful, professional, and respectful. We also learn how to describe problems. If something is not clear, we might say it's uncertain or needs more investigation. If a study has mistakes, we say it's flawed or misleading. And if something is well done, we say it is systematic, conclusive, or based on strong evidence. These are not just fancy words. They help us speak about complex things in a way that is clear and honest. Even when we disagree, research teaches us to stay calm and use polite expressions. Phrases like, I beg to differ, in my opinion, or let's look at the evidence help us talk to others without starting a fight. This is important not only in science, but also in business, education, and daily communication. The more we use these kinds of words, the more confident we become. We learn to ask better questions, to explain our ideas with care, and to listen to others with an open mind. These are skills that can help us grow in any field, whether we are students, workers, or just people who enjoy learning. Research is a journey. It's a way of thinking and speaking that brings us closer to truth, even when the answers are not simple. By using clear, simple, and professional English, we can take part in this journey and share ideas with people all around the world. Keep asking, keep learning, and keep growing.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Correct. Not able to be proved wrong.
Irrefutable.
Very full and complete study to find information.
Extensive research.
Using a careful system or method.
Systematic.
Having errors or mistake.
Flawed.
Crazy, foolish, or silly.
Preposterous.
Unaware or don't know.
Oblivious to.
Way of looking for information.
Investigative approach.
Do something on your own, without help.
Single-handedly.
A final judgment that is not able to be changed. That is final.
Definitive conclusion.
Find out if something is true.
Determine.
Show something to be true.
Indicate.
An argument that is capable of making people believe that point of view.
A compelling case.
A collection of facts that implies or suggests something to be true, but does not prove it.
Circumstantial evidence.
Linked or connected with.
Associated with.
Let's try that faster.
Unaware or don't know.
Oblivious to.
Having errors or mistake.
Flawed.
Find out if something is true.
Determine.
Correct. Not able to be proved wrong.
Irrefutable.
A collection of facts that implies or suggests something to be true, but does not prove it.
Circumstantial evidence.
Way of looking for information.
Investigative approach.
A final judgment that is not able to be changed. That is final.
Definitive conclusion.
Very full and complete study to find information.
Extensive research.
Linked or connected with.
Associated with.
Show something to be true.
Indicate.
Using a careful system or method.
Systematic.
Crazy, foolish, or silly.
Preposterous.
An argument that is capable of making people believe that point of view.
A compelling case.
Do something on your own, without help.
Single-handedly.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Irrefutable. Look, we have irrefutable evidence that he was the killer. Irrefutable. The facts are irrefutable. Smoking has a negative impact on your health. Irrefutable. The irrefutable truth is that there is a monster living in Lake Erie. Systematic. We need to approach this problem in a systematic way. Systematic. We did a systematic evaluation of the evidence. Systematic. He's a very systematic guy. He's very careful with his work. Neil is oblivious to what's going on around him. Are you oblivious to the truth? I was oblivious to the fact that there was a virus on my computer. Definitive conclusion. We have not come to any definitive conclusions yet. Definitive conclusion. Before you make a definitive conclusion, make sure you examine all the evidence. Definitive conclusion. The researchers failed to arrive at any definitive conclusions. We studied the problem carefully, and we found conclusive evidence of global warming. There's no conclusive evidence that links Diet Coke to health problems. There is conclusive evidence showing that smokers die younger.
The search for truth. When I was in my final year at university, something strange happened that completely changed how I see the world. I had always been a curious person, someone who asked too many questions in class and stayed up late reading articles that had nothing to do with my assignments. But I never thought my love for research would lead to something this unexpected. One evening, while walking past the science building, I noticed the lights were still on in one of the labs. That wasn't unusual during exam season, but something caught my eye. A large whiteboard was covered in diagrams, arrows, and long sentences written in red ink. I stopped and looked closer through the window. It looked like a crime scene investigation from a TV show. There were printed articles pinned on the wall, photos, and notes all connected by pieces of red string. I couldn't resist. I went inside. The door was slightly open, and as I stepped in, I realized I wasn't alone. Dr. Keaton, one of the oldest and most respected professors on campus, was sitting at the center table surrounded by books, coffee mugs, and open laptop. He looked up at me and smiled. "Curious?" he asked. I nodded. "What's all this?" He leaned back and took a deep breath. "It's a theory I've been working on for years. But I've hit a wall. The data isn't giving me a definitive conclusion." That phrase stuck with me, a definitive conclusion. A final answer. Something solid. Something you can't argue with. He invited me to sit, and for the next 2 hours, he explained his research. It was detailed. He had done extensive research, collected data, and built his argument carefully. But there was a problem. Some of the numbers didn't match. And that was enough to shake his confidence. "Even with all this," he said, "the evidence is not conclusive." I remember that moment clearly. For the first time, I saw the beauty and the frustration of serious research. You can spend years building a theory, gathering information, testing ideas, and still come to a point where the truth remains unclear. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the idea of conclusive evidence versus circumstantial evidence. I learned that just because something looks right doesn't mean it is. You need proof. Clear, logical, organized proof. I also realized something else. Sometimes, our investigative approach can be flawed. Even if we mean well, we can miss important steps, ignore certain patterns, or let our own beliefs affect how we see the fact. From that night on, I became obsessed with the idea of truth, how to find it, how to prove it, and how easy it is to be wrong when you're so sure you're right. And this all started from a simple conversation in a quiet lab with a professor who had done everything right, but still didn't have all the answers. The next day, I returned to the lab, and to my surprise, Dr. Keaton was there again. This time, he had a new set of printed pages on the table, fresh data from a small study he had just completed with the help of 2 graduate students. He invited me to take a look. The results were interesting, but something felt off. I asked him, was the data collection systematic? He looked at me and smiled. That's the right question. We went through the steps together. It turned out the data was collected in a hurry. Some of the participants hadn't followed the instructions properly. Others didn't meet the criteria for the study. That's when I learned that even a small mistake in the process can create a large margin of error. Without a systematic method, the entire study becomes weak, even if your idea is strong. That's one of the most important lessons I've learned. In research, it's not just what you find that matters, but how you find it. As we reviewed the results, I noticed he was hesitating. I don't think this proves your theory, I said carefully. He nodded. It doesn't. But it points in an interesting direction. I admired his honesty. Many people try to indicate that their theory is correct, even when the evidence doesn't fully support it. But he wasn't like that. He didn't want to make a compelling case based on weak or circumstantial evidence. That day, we talked a lot about what makes an argument strong. We talked about how some researchers present results in a way that seems convincing, but if you look closely, there's no real proof. It's just a collection of ideas that appear connected, but aren't supported by solid fact. Dr. Keaton showed me 2 papers. One was carefully built, with step-by-step analysis and supported by irrefutable data. The other sounded exciting and dramatic, but it had huge gaps in logic. He asked me, which one would the media publish? I answered without thinking, the exciting one. Exactly, he said. And that's the danger. It was shocking, but it made perfect sense. Sometimes people are more interested in attention than accuracy. That's when I first realized that being a good researcher means being brave enough to say, I don't know, and honest enough to wait for real proof. We sat in silence for a while. Then he added something I'll never forget. The goal isn't to be right. The goal is to understand. Those words changed the way I think. Not just about research, but about everything. About arguments. About opinions. About life. You can't rush to a definitive conclusion just because you want one. You need patience, clarity, and the courage to accept the facts, even when they don't agree with your theory. A few weeks later, I found myself in the university library late at night, surrounded by books on psychology, statistics, and scientific method. I was helping Dr. Keaton with a new project. This time, we were starting from scratch. He wanted to design a study that was completely free from bias and error. That meant we had to question every step, every assumption, and every method we used. One thing he kept repeating was, let's not make this another flawed study. That word, flawed, stayed with me. It reminded me how easy it is to make mistakes when you skip details. Even smart people with the best intentions can overlook something small that ruins the whole result. That's why we decided to take a very systematic approach this time. We wrote out each step, created checklists, and made sure we tested everything before starting. We even spent 2 full days just preparing the questions for the survey. We didn't want the wording to be confusing or misleading. Every word needed to be clear, neutral, and easy to understand. That's because language itself can affect result. If your question is unclear, your answers won't be useful. At one point, while reviewing the early data, I noticed something strange. 2 participants gave answers that didn't fit the pattern. I asked Dr. Keaton, should we remove them from the results? He shook his head. No. That would be preposterous. I was surprised. Preposterous? Yes, he said. Removing data just because we don't like it is not science. That's manipulation. That was another lesson. In real research, you don't get to choose your result. You accept what the data tells you, even when it doesn't support your theory. To remove inconvenient results is not just dishonest, it's dangerous. As the study continued, I saw how careful and patient real research had to be. It wasn't about being fast or clever. It was about being honest and thorough. Every part of the process mattered, from designing the survey to interpreting the result. One afternoon, while analyzing a new set of responses, I noticed a clear trend. The data was beginning to support the theory, but not completely. It was strong, but still not conclusive. I felt excited but cautious. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Dr. Keaton looked over the numbers and said, "This is promising. But let's keep going. We need more evidence." That's when I realized how different real research is from what I used to imagine. It's not dramatic. It's not fast. It's not about proving you're right. It's about discovering what's true, even when it's slow, even when it's messy, even when it proves you wrong. And most of all, it's about learning how to think clearly, ask the right questions, and respect the process, because the process is where the truth hides. The deeper we got into the project, the more I started to see how challenging it is to search for the truth. Research is not only about gathering facts, it's also about resisting personal bias, staying open-minded, and being willing to change your mind when the evidence demands it. One morning, Dr. Keaton brought in a folder filled with papers he had written over the past 10 years. He placed it in front of me and said, "Take a look. These are my earlier theories." As I flipped through the pages, I noticed something surprising. His past conclusions were very different from the one he was working on now. In fact, some of them even contradicted his current ideas. I looked up and asked, "Didn't you used to believe the opposite of what you believe now?" He smiled. "Yes. That's because I kept learning." That moment taught me something powerful. Being a true researcher means being willing to let go of your old belief. Even if you were confident before, new information can, and should, change your position. It's not weakness, it's growth. We continued working, and over time, we built what we believed was a compelling case. The evidence wasn't perfect, but it was strong. We had multiple sources, a solid process, and carefully recorded result. Still, we stopped short of calling it a definitive conclusion. Dr. Keaton said, "We're close. But we need to test it again, in a different way." So, we began a second round of investigation. This time, we tried a new method. It took weeks of planning, checking, testing, and adjusting. We were tired, but also energized. Every time we found something useful, it felt like uncovering a small piece of a big puzzle. One afternoon, while reviewing the data from our new study, I noticed a pattern, one that matched our earlier result. I triple-checked it. Then I showed Dr. Keaton. He leaned forward, studied the charts for a long time, and then said quietly, "Now this is interesting." We both knew we were getting close to something important. The data wasn't just suggesting a possibility, it was beginning to indicate something real. But even then, he reminded me, let's not rush. We need to determine whether this pattern holds in other conditions too. One strong result is exciting, but one study is never enough. I nodded. I had learned that lesson well by now. A true conclusion comes from repeating the process, checking for mistakes, and allowing others to examine your work. That night, I stayed late in the lab, looking at all the documents, charts, and notes we had created over the past month. It was incredible how much we had done. But I knew that our work wasn't just about solving one question. It was also about learning how to search wisely, how to think critically, and how to trust the process more than the outcome. I realized that this experience had not only made me a better student, it had made me a different kind of person. A few months later, our research was complete. We had tested the theory from every angle, double-checked our results, and documented everything with care. When we finally sat down to write the final report, I felt both nervous and proud. It was time to present what we had discovered. The process of writing that report was like telling the story of a long journey. We included all the steps, the original idea, the methods we used, the challenges we faced, and the conclusions we reached. We explained how our investigative approach had changed over time, how we corrected early mistakes, and how we had worked hard to avoid bias. We also made sure to point out where the evidence was strong, and where it was still uncertain. That part was important. We weren't just trying to convince people, we were trying to be honest. We didn't want to present a compelling case unless we could truly support it with fact. We refused to depend on circumstantial evidence or assumptions. Everything had to be backed by careful, organized, and systematic research. At the end of the report, we finally reached a definitive conclusion. Not because we wanted to sound confident, but because the data supported it fully. The evidence was clear, repeated, and tested in different ways. It felt good to arrive there, not because we had proven something, but because we had done the work the right way. Dr. Keaton handed me the final printed copy of the report and said, "You've done real research now. Not just reading books or writing theories, but discovering something with your own effort." I'll never forget that moment. It was the result of long hours, small failures, and lessons I'll carry forever. I learned that being oblivious to your own mistakes is one of the biggest dangers in research. I learned that flawed thinking can happen to anyone if you're not careful. And most importantly, I learned that real understanding takes time, honesty, and humility. In the end, it wasn't just about the theory or the result. It was about becoming someone who doesn't settle for easy answers. Someone who keeps asking questions, even when the path is difficult or unclear. That's what real learning is about.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Correct. Not able to be proved wrong.
Irrefutable.
Very full and complete study to find information.
Extensive research.
Using a careful system or method.
Systematic.
Having errors or mistake.
Flawed.
Crazy, foolish, or silly.
Preposterous.
Unaware or don't know.
Oblivious to.
Way of looking for information.
Investigative approach.
Do something on your own, without help.
Single-handedly.
A final judgment that is not able to be changed. That is final.
Definitive conclusion.
Find out if something is true.
Determine.
Show something to be true.
Indicate.
An argument that is capable of making people believe that point of view.
A compelling case.
A collection of facts that implies or suggests something to be true, but does not prove it.
Circumstantial evidence.
Linked or connected with.
Associated with.
Let's try that faster.
Unaware or don't know.
Oblivious to.
Having errors or mistake.
Flawed.
Find out if something is true.
Determine.
Correct. Not able to be proved wrong.
Irrefutable.
A collection of facts that implies or suggests something to be true, but does not prove it.
Circumstantial evidence.
Way of looking for information.
Investigative approach.
A final judgment that is not able to be changed. That is final.
Definitive conclusion.
Very full and complete study to find information.
Extensive research.
Linked or connected with.
Associated with.
Show something to be true.
Indicate.
Using a careful system or method.
Systematic.
Crazy, foolish, or silly.
Preposterous.
An argument that is capable of making people believe that point of view.
A compelling case.
Do something on your own, without help.
Single-handedly.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Irrefutable. Look, we have irrefutable evidence that he was the killer. Irrefutable. The facts are irrefutable. Smoking has a negative impact on your health. Irrefutable. The irrefutable truth is that there is a monster living in Lake Erie. Systematic. We need to approach this problem in a systematic way. Systematic. We did a systematic evaluation of the evidence. Systematic. He's a very systematic guy. He's very careful with his work. Neil is oblivious to what's going on around him. Are you oblivious to the truth? I was oblivious to the fact that there was a virus on my computer. Definitive conclusion. We have not come to any definitive conclusions yet. Definitive conclusion. Before you make a definitive conclusion, make sure you examine all the evidence. Definitive conclusion. The researchers failed to arrive at any definitive conclusions. We studied the problem carefully, and we found conclusive evidence of global warming. There's no conclusive evidence that links Diet Coke to health problems. There is conclusive evidence showing that smokers die younger.